What would you do if your pet parrot suddenly started repeating the exact words of a murder that happened while you weren't home? By the end of this video, you'll discover how one bird's incredible memory became the key witness that solved a case police had given up on, and changed everything we thought we knew about animal intelligence. It's a quiet Sunday morning in Sand Lake, Michigan, May 12, 2015. The smell of fresh coffee mingles with the sound of morning news drifting from the kitchen television. Martin Durham sits in his favorite armchair reading the newspaper, while his 5-year-old African gray parrot Bud perches contentedly on his wooden stand nearby. Martin had adopted Bud 3 years earlier after his previous owner, Glenna, passed away from natural causes. Glenna had been Martin's neighbor and dear friend. When she died, Martin couldn't bear the thought of Bud going to strangers. The gray parrot with the bright red tail had been Glenna's constant companion, her confidant, her source of daily joy and conversation. "Good morning, Bud," Martin says, as he does every morning. Good morning, Bud responds cheerfully, tilting his head and fluffing his feathers. African gray parrots are known for their remarkable intelligence and ability to mimic human speech with startling accuracy. But Bud was special, even among his kind. He had a vocabulary of over 200 words and phrases, and seemed to understand context in ways that amazed everyone who met him. He could ask for specific foods, comment on the weather, and even seemed to sense people's emotions. Martin had grown deeply attached to the bird. After his wife passed away 2 years ago, Bud had become more than a pet. He was family, a living connection to his dear friend Glenna, and a source of comfort in his golden years. The house was peaceful, familiar, safe. Martin's daily routine was simple and predictable. Morning coffee, newspaper, a few hours of gardening, lunch with Bud chattering nearby, afternoon television, then dinner and quiet conversation with his feathered friend. But in just a few hours, their quiet world would be shattered forever. And Bud would become the only witness to something so horrible, so shocking, that his words would haunt everyone who heard them. At 2:30 p.m. that same day, Martin decides to run errands in town. He needs groceries, wants to stop by the hardware store, maybe visit his friend Harold at the coffee shop. It's a beautiful spring afternoon, perfect for getting out of the house. "I'll be back soon, buddy," Martin tells Bud, gently stroking the parrot's head. "You be good while I'm gone." Be good, Bud repeats, bobbing his head. Martin locks the door and drives away, leaving Bud alone in the quiet house, just as he had done hundreds of times before. What Martin doesn't know is that someone has been watching his house, someone who knows his routines, who has been waiting for exactly this moment. At 3:15 p.m., while Martin is comparing prices at the grocery store, his front door is quietly forced open. Bud, perched in the living room, suddenly goes silent. His head tilts, listening to footsteps that don't belong to Martin. These are heavier, more urgent, unfamiliar. Then voices, angry voices. "Where is it?" The first voice is harsh, demanding. "I don't know what you're talking about." The second voice is higher, frightened, pleading. Bud's intelligent eyes track the movement in his home. These are strangers, intruders. His territory is being invaded, and his family isn't here to protect him. The argument escalates. Furniture crashes, glass breaks. Bud hunches lower on his perch, every instinct telling him to stay silent, to become invisible. But African greys have an extraordinary ability. They don't just mimic words, they absorb entire conversations, storing them in their remarkable memories to replay later, sometimes at the most unexpected moments. "Please don't do this," the frightened voice cries out. "You should have minded your own business," the harsh voice responds. "What happens next is swift and terrible. Sounds that no living creature should have to witness, sounds that burn themselves into Bud's memory with perfect, horrible clarity." Then silence, footsteps, the front door opening and closing, a car starting, driving away. Bud sits alone in the suddenly quiet house, surrounded by chaos, his world forever changed. When Martin returns at 5:30 p.m., he finds his front door ajar. His heart sinks as he pushes it open and sees the destruction inside. Overturned furniture, broken glass, and something far worse. His neighbor, Linda Hoover, lies motionless on his living room floor. Martin's hands shake as he calls 911. The police arrive within minutes, followed by paramedics who confirm what Martin already knows. Linda is gone. Detective Sarah Morrison takes charge of the scene. Linda Hoover, 67, was a retired teacher who lived 3 houses down. She sometimes checked on Martin's house when he was away. The working theory is that she surprised a burglar and paid the ultimate price. But there are no witnesses, no fingerprints, no obvious signs of what the intruder was looking for. The case seems hopeless from the start. Except for one thing the police don't yet realize. Bud saw everything. 3 weeks pass. The police investigation stalls. Detective Morrison has followed every lead, interviewed every neighbor, checked every security camera in the area. Nothing. The case is growing cold, and she knows it. Martin struggles with grief and guilt. Linda died in his house while checking on his property. He can barely sleep, barely eat. The only thing that keeps him grounded is caring for Bud, who has been unusually quiet since that terrible day. Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, something extraordinary happens. Martin is washing dishes when he hears Bud speaking in the living room. But these aren't the usual cheerful greetings or requests for crackers. These are words Martin has never heard Bud say before. "Where is it?" Bud's voice is different, harsher, more aggressive than his usual gentle tone. Martin freezes, dish still in his hands. "I don't know what you're talking about." Now Bud's voice changes completely, higher, frightened, pleading. Martin's blood runs cold. He recognizes that second voice. It's Linda's voice, her exact tone, her precise pronunciation, coming from Bud's beak. "Please don't do this," Bud continues in Linda's terrified voice. "You should have minded your own business." Back to the harsh, angry tone. Martin drops the dish. It shatters on the kitchen floor, but he doesn't notice. He's listening to a conversation between his murdered neighbor and her killer, preserved in perfect detail in his parrot's extraordinary memory. His hands shaking, Martin calls Detective Morrison. "Detective, this is Martin Durham. I think Bud witnessed Linda's murder, and he's repeating what he heard." There's silence on the line. Then, "Mr. Durham, I'll be right over." When Detective Morrison arrives, Bud performs his haunting recital again. The detective listens with growing amazement and horror as the parrot switches between the victim's terrified pleas and the killer's angry threats. But it's what Bud says next that breaks the case wide open. "You should have minded your own business, Don." A name. The killer's name, spoken by Linda in her final moments, preserved forever in Bud's memory. Don Hensley, Linda's nephew, a man with gambling debts and a drug problem. A man who knew Linda sometimes had cash in her house. A man who thought his aunt might have money hidden at Martin's place, where she sometimes house sat. Within 24 hours, Don Hensley is in custody. Faced with Bud's testimony and additional evidence, the police gather based on this new lead. He confesses. Bud had done what seemed impossible. He had given voice to the voiceless, provided testimony from beyond the grave, and ensured that justice would be served. Detective Morrison would later say that in 30 years of police work, she had never encountered anything like Bud's testimony. A parrot had solved a murder case that human investigators couldn't crack. But Bud's story raises profound questions about animal intelligence and memory. How much do our pets really understand? What do they witness in our daily lives that we never realize? African grey parrots can live for 60 years or more. Imagine the conversations, the secrets, the moments they carry in their remarkable minds. If this incredible story of animal intelligence and justice amazed you, hit that like button to honor Bud's memory and Linda's justice. Subscribe with notifications on, because next week, we're exploring the story of the dog that led police to a kidnapped child and the extraordinary bond that saved a life. But I want to hear from you. Has your pet ever surprised you with their intelligence or memory? Have they ever repeated something that shocked you or seemed to understand more than you thought possible? Share your story in the comments below, because after hearing about Bud, I believe our animals are witnesses to our lives in ways we're only beginning to understand. Remember, in a world where justice can seem elusive and the truth can be buried, sometimes the most important testimony comes from the most unexpected source, a voice that speaks not for itself, but for those who can no longer speak at all. The next time you talk around your pets, remember, they're listening. And sometimes they're the only ones who can tell the truth when it matters most.